shape your girl, I'm a tika body, my lola la people, oh yeah, Joby mommy, oh yeah, Joby daddy, oh yeah, Joby low, my love Joby the show, come by Winnie B, my love shape your girl, I'm a tika body, my lola la people, oh yeah, Joby mommy, oh yeah, Joby daddy, oh yeah, Joby low, my love Joby the show.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Chick Chat Live. My name is Cornelia, and on the first segment of the show today, we are talking about pivoting career and adapting to what skills are in high demand. The hot topic of the day is parental resentment. Ooh. Joining me in the studio today are some wonderful guests, one of which is wellness advocate Nana Konama. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
I also have Stacey Enyame. Did I get that right? Yes. Thank you for joining me, food entrepreneur.
Thank you.
I love your multi-hyphenates.
Yes.
You were just doing your thing, girl. Yes. And last but certainly not the least, diva, singer-songwriter extraordinaire, Ria Boss. Welcome to the show, ladies. We're gonna have I'm loving the vibe already. We're going to have a good show today. So it's a new tradition. Before I throw the first question out, I want you guys to pick a number between 2 and 12.
7.
Who's going to let it go?
I choose 5.
7. And what do you pick?
8.
Okay. Stacey, do the honors, roll the dice.
In New York, we have something called CeeLo. So
You got.
What is that, 12?
If this was Lulu, she would be.
What did you choose, 8?
8.
Okay, so you get to go first.
Well, okay.
thank me.
So my entire couple of years has been kind of changing career. Like what I studied is not what I worked as,
Right.
and it's certainly not what I'm doing now. So I've realized that some of my skills were transferable, and some of them probably maybe not. So I wanted to ask what your experience was with pivoting career, or did you just wake up and say, I'm a singer from the womb? And what your experience with that was, and what you struggled with.
I guess I would say, with regards to like wanting to be a singer, that is something that I've known, but I also believe in sort of like expanding your skill set as a person just in general. Like a story that my mom told me once was she was like applying for a job and they asked her if she knew how to type. And this was like when computers were still like, were first coming out, so to speak. And she didn't know, but she told them she knew how to. And she made sure that by the time the interview and the test was, there, she knew how to do it. And so I feel like when it comes to sort of careers and how I've seen it, I like to widen my skill set such that I'm able to do many things, because even as a singer-songwriter, I went and got my master's in media management, my bachelor's in culture and media studies, and then I went on to also get a certificate in music production.
Okay, girl.
And so apart from being able to sing, I can also compose.
Yeah.
I can write for other people, so that's another stream of income. I can also code, so it's like I can also build my own sites, build sites for people.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just believe in, even regardless of being able to pivot your career, also just having a wide skill set will allow you to kind of thrive in this like ever-changing like work landscape that we're in at the moment.
Oh, girl.
Oh, thank you.
You're doing a lot. Because it's easy for people to just see you singer-songwriter, and it's kind of like, I don't know what the word is. It's just like a very fluffy, creative talent.
And that's not the only thing that will help me pay my bills, you know? And so I think it's important to be able to do different things and then like open different, streams of income. Because I'm freelance, I don't work 9 to 5, so I have to kind of go after the things that I want to do in order to sustain my singer-songwriter title.
Oh, well, okay. Well, thank you for that. Now, speaking of freelancing, Stacey, what do you have to say about, I feel like when there's not enough talk around selling yourself as like a freelancer, or this is what I do now after you've come out of like what you did before. Right. If it was a 9 to 5, did you find that difficult when you were kind of selling yourself as an entrepreneur? Or did you kind of stay in work 9 to 5 and then kind of phase out? How did that work?
It wasn't a phase out. It was really a hard stop for me because I just made the decision. That's just the type of person I am. So I just sort of made the decision that this is not what I wanted to do
and what were you
anymore.
Doing before?
I was in banking.
Okay.
And
Here.
I was in banking. And so I just transitioned out of that and decided, okay, I want to start my own food business. As far as selling myself, I would say that's still something that I'm working on. I think too often women, we like to do the work, but we don't really want to talk about the work that we're doing. We're pretty modest and humble. And I know I have that trait myself. But I think it's important if, you're selling a brand, if you're selling a product, a musician, you really have to market it and speak the loudest. And my old boss told me, she said, no matter how good you are, the person who talks the loudest gets the resources. And that's applicable to any area in life. Some people, they just won't know about you if you're not out there putting yourself out there.
Yeah. What key skill would you say was like from your experience helped you in setting the business up?
I think the biggest thing is more of an innate skill, and it's just the perseverance and the tenacity. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of rejection. There's a lot of disappointment because naturally, when you go into entrepreneurship, there are a lot of unknowns. There are a lot of things you haven't learned before. And so you sort of learn on the ground, while you're doing it. It's really practical experience. There's nothing that school or any kind of training can really teach you. So I think if I had to choose two things, I would say, the perseverance and the tenacity to just keep going when it gets difficult.
So, Nana, when it comes to being equipped to wear many hats, what would you say that statement means to you?
To kind of pick up from what Ria and Stacey were talking about, sort of like being able to sort of pivot around these really depends on what your particular situation looks like. And I think it can be a tough call sometimes, depending on what is available to you. Because if I've been very, very blessed to have a family business that I could always go back to and to this day work for my family's business. And so that, knowing that I had sort of that, safety net makes it a lot easier for me to say, okay, I'm going to become a yoga teacher. And with that, come what may, I'm going to start a business. I'm coming into cosmetics and hair care, and I'm going to travel and be a wellness advocate and also travel and speak on women and innovations, which is something I also do. But I'm able to do these things because I have that safety net.
Okay.
And so
that's honest, because not everybody has the safety net.
And I think it's very important to be honest about that, because I think sometimes we say follow your dreams, but it's sister gotta eat. It's real. There's bills to pay and there are real responsibilities. So I think I would say that there's nothing wrong, especially as a creative, if you're going into a creative endeavor. I think there is nothing wrong with having a day job. Some of the greatest and biggest artists, Toni Morrison, who's won Nobel Prizes, she worked in publishing. She had a 9-to-5 for many, many years, well deep into her career. She had written books that had won awards, but she still maintained her job. And I think one of the reasons a lot of creatives do that is that you don't want your creative endeavor to become slave to the bills. Because then when you hold it hostage to that, that also
sucks the joy out of it.
It sucks the joy out of it. It sucks the energy out of it as well. So I would say there's nothing wrong. Wear your many hats depending on what your resources will make available to you, wear your many hats, and also depending on what you think you can handle. Because some people are okay with being a starving artist, but if that's your space, fine. I don't believe everybody is meant to say, "All right, hard stop. I'm dropping everything. I'm going in this direction." And so I think it's important to be aware. Number one, what your resources will allow you to do, and number two, also just what you as an individual is able to handle and wear those hats accordingly.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I think that applies to entrepreneurship in general. And I can definitely attest to that. Although I did do a hard stop. If I had to do it all over again, I would have done both and phased it out. Because, like she said, when you're worrying about bills, when you're worrying about money, it just adds additional stress. It can make you stronger because it's sort of do or die, and you have to make it work. But it's always easier to kind of give yourself some room to really grow the way you need to grow while you have something supporting and funding your business. So I think it's creatives and anyone who's in business or entrepreneurship. I think some people are also concerned about going back. I mean, that ties to sort of the brand that you're building.
It's not a sin. Like, you can go back.
Right, you can go back. You can decide to change your mind. You can decide to do something else. You can decide that, you know what, I thought this was something that I wanted to do, or it would have been great, or it's on hold for now.
I think there's a lot of emphasis on scaling up. Nobody talks about the scaling down.
Yes.
And I think there's nothing wrong with scaling down. And finding another hustle that gives you the flexibility to do all your hustles.
Yes.
I mean, like recently when that whole social media thing came out about Gary Owens from The Cosby Show having a job at Trader Joe's.
Yes.
And what ended up being beautiful about it, I mean, of course, whoever posted it wanted to shame him. But, what ended up being beautiful about was all these artists, actors saying, hey, listen, we all work in between gigs. And some of us get these gigs that are easy to drop. So maybe him working at Trader Joe's is because Trader Joe's gives him that flexibility to go on auditions and etc. And I think that we also, societally have to like rid ourselves of certain narratives that once you started something you can't scale it down, or once you if you're going to get a job it needs to be this high profile job for it to be worthwhile.
I think that's a very good point, because I definitely went back to work for this to happen. And I don't think that's a bad thing. So I want to move on to social capital, which is the value of like your social networking groups. Let me actually read what the definition is. It's about the value of your social networks and bonding with similar people and bridging between diverse people with norms of reciprocity. So when it comes to your social network with singing and you finding people who can help you and probably produce shows for you and kind of connecting with, I guess because your industry is kind of maybe growing, especially because you're niche as well, right? How have you had struggles with finding people to work with you?
To be honest, no. And I would say that because I personally, just as an individual, tend to like go with my tribe. And when I say that, I mean, I always find myself in situations with like-minded individuals, people that are sort of like on my same wavelength, so
what
to
does
speak.
finding yourself in situations mean?
For example,
so do you network? I
network, but I also, it's like I don't go to every single, let's say, music event. I go to ones that might be, more tailored to like what I'm doing. I try to connect with more people that are, let's say, doing the neo soul thing or R&B thing here, because it is quite niche. And so in finding those individuals as well, I'm like growing because I didn't know a lot of people who did that music here. And so it allows me to kind of like also open my friend circles and open my sort of like working circles as well. And I think also for me I went to high school here in Accra, and that also helped me a lot, because a lot of the people that also have been hiring me for specific gigs, I know them because we're alumni from the same school. And I think a lot of people don't talk about it enough, but sometimes your school circle, the alumni,
they help you.
They can really come to your aid later on in life. And so it's important to also cultivate real relationships in the fields that you want to, cultivate those relationships in, because later in life, those are the same people that could be giving you a check.
Celery, I like that you said real relationships. Like I picked up on that word real. And I'll pass it over to you, Nana. When it comes to like building real relationships, because I have different friendships. I have media friends, I have my real friends, I have business friends. What kind of skills can you build to help you win at life? Like what people skills would you say that you need to help you kind of gather more people in your social circle?
I've always the type of person to say that like I only have close friends, and just going through, I recognize that there's nothing wrong with having these loose associations, especially when it comes to somebody once told me, hey, your network is your net worth. And so I using that understanding, I've kind of taken it to heart. It's still hard for me, partially because it's just a personality thing. I'm naturally sort of like a reclusive.
But I think there are a lot of introverts that would
still know how
relate to you.
Right. Yeah. So I am, a reclusive, but I'm sociable. Yeah. And so I'm capable of reaching out. But I think the most important for me, and I think for people who kind of have a similar personality to me, who have the tendency to sort of retreat, I say the most important thing is just get out of your head. Yeah. Just get out of your head. Stop thinking too deeply about it. Walk up to the individual, say what you want to say. And most of the time people will, I'll say the most important skill for me is one, get out of your head, and two, also recognize that don't ever be afraid of the room. Just as amazing that XY, like whoever's in the room, right, you're also doing something dope and amazing. And I've been in those spaces where I wouldn't speak for myself, and somebody would say, "Oh, you need to meet Nana. She does all these." And somebody who I really
advocate for you,
right? Who
advocate for yourself,
right? Because they know I'm just not going to do it, or I'm, and be in a room with people who. I went to the Cannes Lions Creative Festival, and I had this really great, amazing moment because I work in renewable energy with my family, which is solar. And there's a very famous person, I'm not going to disclose, maybe behind the scenes afterwards, said, hey, I'm building a house. Can you tell me? Like really was asking for my expert advice. And I'm looking at this person like, is this person asking for my expert advice?
Couldn't believe they were talking to you.
Couldn't believe they were talking to me and say, should I go with this one or should I go with that one? I know the technology. And immediately I was like, snap out of it. In that moment, recognizing the skill that you have, but that the other person doesn't. And like that value proposition in that moment was that I was offering advice that this person felt like they could trust me to get it. And I think 1, get out of your head. 2, don't be afraid of the room. And 3, recognize that you come with a specific set of skills and a specific outlook that nobody else has, and stand in the value of knowing that. And once you fully grasp that, then open your mouth and go ahead and do it and be. Yeah.
I like that. And Stacey, what about you?
I would say the most important thing that I've learned as of late in terms of networking, 2 things. One is don't network just to find out what you can get out of the person. Really try to add value to the other person's life and know that whatever you might get in return, it may not be physical, it may not be measurable. It would be something like you're just learning about the industry, or you love the way that they carry themselves, or they're just very ambitious. They go really hard, and there are certain things that just can't be taught, didactically. But it can you can learn it just by being around someone and just get a sense of who they are and learn the things that they do and how they react in certain situations. So I think if you start to look at it that way as more of a learning experience, it might be easier to sort of approach certain people and really get to know them. And I think the other thing is that, tying to what Nana mentioned about the sort of loose relationships, sometimes I think we have expectations of other people. And when that person doesn't meet our expectations...
They sure never do.
They never do. And then they're not really my friend, or, I don't want to be friends. I can't be friends with this person. But if you just are able to identify 1 or 2 good things about a person and you focus on those things, these are not going to be, people that are in your wedding or, the godmother of your child. But there might still be something that you can learn from this experience or from that relationship that will help you grow. And ultimately, you want to build relationships to help you grow. So I think learning that really helped me be more open to making new friends and meeting new people and networking without, having these reservations about, making new friends.
I want to come back to something you said, Nana. When I asked the question, your initial thing was like, ooh, I am not, because it's something that you're like... The reason why I'm asking this question is because I was faced with, what is your social capital? And my aunt, I was fundraising, and my aunt was like, oh, just write a list of 100 people. Like, 100 people should be able to give you $50. Like, if you have more people giving you less, you should be able to raise the money. And when I had to put pen to paper to write this, we ended up nicknaming it a power list. And it's like, who is on your power list? And I honestly could not come up with 5 names. And I was like, like, what is going on? So who is in my phone? Because like you said, your net worth is your network. So who are these people? Because I started getting, because I supposedly know a lot of people, but how come 100 people couldn't make it to this power list? And it kind of brought me face to face with like, okay, what are you really doing and how are you really trying to get to where you're going? If you can't honestly say, who are the 10 people right now that can give me $50? It will shock you how difficult it is to write that list down. Guaranteed people that it's not going to be a problem.
I also think it's such a tough call because you kind of play along the lines of sort of like, I want real relationships. For instance, like Stacey and I are like actually good friends and, beyond this, but it's like you want real relationships. But at the same time, you want like relationships that are valuable.
Productive, meaningful, kind of like, valuable relationships.
So what if the people you connect with... and I think it's always such a tough call because it's on one level, you don't want to be that person. Because I think a lot of this language, and we see all these social media memes, and I'm like, is it really about that? Like, if you don't got, if you don't got at least, if you're, the people around you are not like amassing wealth of X amount, they're not your real friends. And it's like, you also don't want to be so utilitarian about what kind of
You better use that word.
Right?
You better use that word on the show.
Yes, thesaurus much. So you also don't want to be too utilitarian. Like Stacey said, that there is value in people beyond so much. And I, like you said, like, I think, I don't know, because I feel like it's balance. I think it's a matter of finding balance. On one level, you do want friends who are just like, look, you're the person I just.
But we do have to be honest with ourselves about what it is.
The value, right?
What it is. You have to look at your directory and say, okay, fine, this is not a relationship that I might use now, even if it's a genuine relationship. But you have to start to build relationship, even if it's your ex-boss. Right. It could be your cousin of yours that takes you seriously. So I think, like you said, genuine relationships eventually lead to you being able to ask for $50.
Yeah, right.
But I also think we have to start being intentional about fostering those relationships.
Agreed.
My career spans around technology because I studied computer science, so I did some technology consulting. And then I worked in marketing, which I was passionate about. So that itself was a pivot because I was gearing towards what I liked. But then I went to business school because I'd always wanted to, and then came out and thought, okay, I need to make money. I worked in financial services, actually, so in banking for about 2 years. And so in that, while I left, I was still job hunting. So I wouldn't say that when I started Naija Startups, I started exclusively for business, but I was kind of one leg in, one leg out. But to be honest, I've always known that I'm an entrepreneur at heart. So I think it was more the like knowing what my why is, which took a while up till now. But so it was difficult for me to own entrepreneurship. So for a long time, I was still one leg in, one leg out, not even really like pivoting the business to where it should be, until I decided, do you know what? You can actually do this and do it well and exclusively and run with it. And so when I realized that, I started harnessing the skills that I already had and growing some more, leveraging the hustle spirit. So I'm a good networker, but not even networking in terms of getting stuff from people, just connecting people. I love doing things like that. I love building communities. I love to market. I can sell anything, can tell stories. So I was combining like my marketing, digital background, network as well. And then even my business background now, because even for that, I kind of just laid that fallow for a while. I'm realizing, look, you went to business school, you can help people sort of raise money, like these things you already know, why aren't you using them? So it's been interesting, like just the journey and knowing myself, a lot of reflection, and then now being able to like harness all those skills together.
That's a very good question, because when I did start my career, it was extremely unpopular to do more than one thing. And I started my career as a photographer, and then I wanted to branch into music and acting, and everyone would tell me, you have to pick one, you confuse people, no one will take you seriously. And I never got the confuse people thing, because I thought, it's not rocket science, they're not stupid. I take pictures, I also act, and I sing. There's literally nothing complicated about it when you think about it. I can name so many people who do it. J-Lo acts, she sings, she's also a fashion designer. I'm not confused about that at all. Diddy does the same. Designer, rapper, all around the world it's always been done. So I just refused to take no for an answer, but then that came with its challenges. So for me, it was just a decision I'm the sort of person that I'm extremely passionate. That's just how I'm built internally. So when I want to do something, when I have something that I feel like I want to birth or I want to get out of me, till I do it, I can't sleep, I can barely eat. I almost fall into a depression if I can't do it. So when I had started my photography career, I had gotten quite comfortable in it. I was doing very well. That kind of picked up to a level that I didn't expect, and picked up really, really fast. So, and then I became very popular for it. So then when I wanted to do music and wanted to do acting, I did get the, what's she doing? A lot of people wouldn't take me seriously. A lot of OAPs would just not play my music. They wouldn't even listen to it simply because she's a photographer, why is she singing? So it took a lot to kind of get past that hurdle, because what happens is people put you in a box, right? And they want you to stay in that box.
I studied microbiology, I was pre-med. So I worked with Dow Chemical in the States for about 4 years. Moved to Nigeria because I was trying to figure out if I wanted to do med school or not. I felt like I was doing it for my parents. And then I got a job with Dangote Group. I worked there, so Dangote Farms, I worked there for about 7-8 years. I managed like tomato projects in Kano, working with outgrowers, farmers, and I managed a pineapple plant in Calabar, working with outgrowers as well, for pineapple farms, turning into concentrate for our juice dancer. Then additional was minister, so we did a lot of policy work for business investment. So it's good, I enjoyed it. And for me, it wasn't at that point they would like rotate you. We had to do like the LPG, oil and gas, and we did the agriculture. But I enjoyed it because literally people's lives would change when we're coming into community. It wasn't about the product we're making, but it was about the lives of the farmers. Now they could send their children to school, they have jobs, and you literally see their children grow. I enjoyed it. I felt like there was a story to be told, but nobody was talking about it. Agriculture was like, it was at the back, you couldn't even get it on the front page. So I felt like, okay, let's try to put, put a little bit of media in there. Let's talk about people's stories. Again, I would do a lot of research in the States. They had like videos, like shows on agriculture. I wanted to replicate it in Nigeria. So I started out, I told a lot of people, well, I told a few people, and everyone thought I was crazy, that I should just keep my job. And it was hard because, again, I love my job, but I had a boss that was really encouraging. I felt like I could do anything. If I never worked a 9 to 5, I don't think I'll be doing this, because at my job, I had a lot of projects that I felt like I could do a lot of things. So going back, I decided to leave Dangote. So I thought I would just maybe consult for a bit, but I just thought, okay, let's focus, do the media thing. I started out. I remember to even get the first interview, it was so hard. But then with time, I literally stalked people down. I was like, let me interview you, talk about sector. My advice I would give anybody looking at is just start. I can't even watch my first videos because I literally sucked. But I just started out, and with time, you learn and you improve yourself.
Fostering goodwill. I think it's important to and how you can foster more goodwill in your life. I don't want to go too long into it, but do you think you don't get enough goodwill, or are you still trying to attract more goodwill?
I think this is really kind of hard for me to answer because I feel like it starts with the self. So I think that the goodwill I receive is also, sort of like equal to what I'm putting out as
there.
well.
Yeah.
And I believe that the reason why I fostered some goodwill in my own space is because I'm intentional about being good, and sharing that and my own goodwill with individuals. So I think that's a good answer. Yeah, that's how I see it. Yeah,
because it's also asking, not necessarily research, networking for people who, it's not about getting their business cards. It's also, I can do this for you.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Sometimes it's always about, what they can do for you. Right. What can you do for them?
Or what can you do for each other?
Yeah.
Maybe you're that person. I think also, sorry to circle back to, what we like. Sometimes you're that person in the room.
Right.
I think that sometimes we focus on like, okay, I'm going there to meet these people, but sometimes you're that person for somebody else coming in. Like, oh my gosh, Ria's gonna be there. Okay, like I just really need, a woman who's made it in the music.
Right. Exactly.
You might see yourself as I'm kind of making it, I'm getting there, but someone is like, oh no, she's made it.
She's made it.
And so also recognizing as much as you are sort of like outward looking, there's also someone who's sort of seeing you as that person in that room also.
Don't be worried. Don't be scared to sort of reach back and help those people.
Right.
You're looking for that next person, someone else is looking towards you.
Which brings us to fostering goodwill.
Well, that's a good summary to the very full circle of this first segment. She brought it around. You just did my job and made it easier. Thank you, girl. Well, that's all we have time for in this first segment. We'll be right back with the hot topic of the day. Stay tuned.
Hi guys, here's the story. My mother had a long-standing affair with a married man, and then she fell pregnant and had my older brother. Our father didn't leave his wife or claim my brother as a child, but my mother continued the affair for 6 years, and then she had me. We knew who our father was, but he never acknowledged us. He lived not too far from us, and we would frequently see him, but he would pretend we didn't exist. He was a well-known and well-established man with a foreign wife and 3 other children. We lived in a 2-bedroom house that my mother could barely afford. She could hardly afford to take care of us. This would be perfectly understandable if this was the card life had dealt her and she was doing her best. But her choices were the cause of some of our sufferings. My father never acknowledged or provided for my older brother, but my mother continued in this relationship for 6 years, and then she had me. She had to hide my brother and chose to keep us a secret, as his wife was none the wiser about us. When I got older, I started asking questions. I wanted to know my father, and my mother explained to me that I could not. Her reasons were never enough. I didn't understand why she didn't force him to take care of us. She told me that my father had his own family and I was not allowed to go to his house. I have struggled with feeling rejected, and it haunts me till this day. I am not proud of what my mother did, and I was not happy with the secrecy around me. It is only now that I realize that our existence could have broken up his family. Recently, our father passed away, and my mom is mandating that we attend his funeral. I'm not sure if he left an inheritance for us and if that's what she's interested in. She has been reminding us every day, but we are now grown adults in our late 30s. How can we grieve someone who never showed interest in his own children? Am I wrong for resenting my mother for her choices? I just marvel at her eagerness to still show up at his funeral, knowing fully well she was his mistress.
Welcome back, guys. You've heard the story. Now let's hear what else you
guys have to say. Ria, this is the deep one.
Yeah, this is a heavy topic, right?
Yes.
Parental
Resentment. It's a good title. Because I think that there are a lot of us that actually relate to resenting a parent. This is quite an unfortunate situation. And I feel like, the writer is standing in their feelings and it's valid.
Yeah.
I think before we even start to have conversation around it, whatever feelings you are feeling are always valid,
right.
regardless of whether people acknowledge them or not. So
Exactly.
what do you think about this situation? Do you think he's right to judge the mother?
See, when I even listen to what the situation is, it sort of like parallels my own relationship with my father. Not to get all sad on everyone today,
well, we could get sad.
So my father is someone who, he was with my mom, but then he wanted to have me. But then due to, he had political aspirations in his country and decided that another woman would look better as his first lady.
As opposed to your mom.
As opposed to my mother. And so all of a sudden, this plan that you had with this woman went by the wayside and you came to the christening of your child and then you were kind of absconded. You were a ghost. And I've harbored intense resentment, not only to
How old were you at this point?
Oh, I was a baby.
Okay.
So and he's not necessarily been in my life my whole life, and I'm 28 now.
Yeah.
And I harbored not only a lot of resentment towards him, but towards my mother, because I say to myself, I mean, how did you not even see the red flags of this man, leaving you with this child, not even helping you with anything? But as I've gotten older, as much as my feelings are valid, just like this young woman's feelings are valid, we also have to remember that our parents are also human. Who are also dealing with a specific set of tools or, their own specific emotions, own triggers, all these different things that might have led them to the decisions that they made, the decisions we might not agree with. We might have done things differently. Or maybe we wouldn't have had the chance to do things differently. But I think that once I look at them as just like humans going through it sometimes, the anger, the resentment starts to sort of subside because I don't also want to be angry forever or hold a grudge forever. And so I had to start seeing my father for just the man he is as opposed to the man that has abandoned me.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to also just go around as a girl who has daddy issues all day, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I do think that, yes, you can harbor that resentment, of course, but it's also important to communicate, right? So later on in life, my mother and I have had those tough discussions about my father. Because at first it was kind of like a no-no.
And who brought those up?
I brought them up.
Okay.
And
what was that that first line?
This was actually quite recently, to be honest with you. Within the last 2 years, we've had these discussions, and they've made me see my father differently than I have my whole life. Whereas I was a very angry before, I think I'm more understanding now and more ready and willing to speak to him. Because at first I didn't want to talk to the man. To be honest, you don't show up for birthdays. All those kinds of things. They hurt, especially when you're really young. They hurt when you're older as well. But I think now that my mother has given me the facts, all the facts that you wouldn't want to tell a little kid. I see him for who he is. And the resentment has lowered. I mean, I would still have a bit of anger there, but if it weren't for him, I wouldn't be here. And I'm happy to be alive. So there's those little things.
You can appreciate him
for that. I think I'm pretty awesome. So I can appreciate him for that,
Over to you, Stacey. What do you think? Did you find the words harsh? Did you find that it was judgmental and overly critical of a parent?
I think it was very critical and judgmental because of the age. She said that she was in her late 30s. And I think at that stage, you should be working on healing because in the way the story was worded, all we heard about was the negative and the mother being blamed for everything. I really didn't even see much blame going to the father, who was the one who has abandoned her. And I think it's important to really, like she said, people are human. People make mistakes. You cannot hold this woman for a mistake that she made 35, almost 40 years ago. It hurts. It was absolutely wrong. She shouldn't have had the child. She shouldn't have been in that sort of situation. But we are not our mistakes. We are not our past. And the woman or the person in question should not feel that all her life's woes is because of her mother. She should start to look at the positive things in her life, the things that her mother did do, the growth that she's had, the growth that her mother has had, and start the healing, start the conversation, really forgive her, because if she doesn't forgive her, she's never going to move forward, and she's going to have the same issues.
But I think that in saying just forgive the mother, it can be pretty hard when you actually look at your mother and like you are team bad decisions. So it could be that the mother has good parts, which means you're not homeless, you're not on the streets, at least you were able to, I provided you enough. But it seems like as they were growing up, there might have been more sufferings than they needed to. It seems like she's actually questioning why you chose to stay in a relationship post, was it 6 or 7 years, and have me again with somebody that was not yours. So even for a woman, what's that telling a woman? Because that wasn't her husband. She was in an extramarital affair. So how that affects the child, I don't think is as easy to just say forgive, because you're the one growing up in that situation to constantly have to hide from your father or not be, and then now you have to grieve him because he's dead. Like, you know what I mean? You're grieving somebody you never had a relationship with. I find it a little bit hard to just forgive.
It's not just forgive, but it's a process.
Right.
It takes time. And, we all, I'm sure, have had things that we resent about our parents. I have things that I resent about my mom. My father also wasn't in my life. I can easily, still harp on those things. But I find that when I'm harping on those things, I'm putting the accountability on whatever issues that I have on that thing, because I haven't healed from that thing. And now I'm using that thing as an excuse for every other thing that goes wrong in my life. And while I know it's not an easy task, it is not easy. It takes work. It's going to take time, therapy, and obviously we don't really
encourage therapy in Africa.
In this side of the world.
But it is important, yeah.
Having a discussion, just having that open discussion and trying to take the steps to move forward, because...
What was your first healing step in getting over it? Yeah.
Discussion. It was just an open discussion with my mom, having a discussion, and even.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
How old were you when you began sort of being more open? Asking.
I would say late 20s is when we would have conversations, but even aside from the conversations that I'm having with my mom, I'm not reliant on her answer to do the healing for me.
My take of this situation is the mother is trifling, okay? So irresponsible. I think it's horrible that the children have to suffer for choices that she made willingly. I think that the children are well within their rights to refuse to go for that burial. If I was any of them, I definitely would not go. And now I know the mother wants them to go because of possibly getting some sort of inheritance, but the truth is, if it's in the will, it's in the will. Whether or not they go for that burial, it makes no difference whatsoever. If it has been willed to them, and it's a system that's working properly, then they're going to get the money or whatever it is he left them. If he hasn't, what exactly is she thinking? That they're going to go for the burial and then somebody's going to be like, hey, these children, let's cut them some checks. No, that is not going to happen. So I don't even understand the whole point of she wants them to go because of the inheritance. The burial has no bearing on whether or not they get an inheritance or not. The only thing that does is whether or not anything was willed to them, period. So it's very, very upsetting, and I'm just so disappointed in this woman and the choices that she made. For herself, fine, but then, now you brought 2 children into the world that have to deal with this. Those children were nice, because if it was me, I'm going to knock at that man's door. Hello, hi, dad, hi. Straight up, I would have let myself be known. I will introduce myself to his family. I don't care. I'll have done something.
You don't know what the mother went through. We don't know what the story is. It's easy for everybody to say how, you've been there for 6 years. But we have people that, they've been in bad relationships for years. We don't know what the story is. We don't know if you saved that from somewhere, or we just don't know what the story is. So we need more information. But how you're feeling, talk to your mother about it. I think with African parents, it's so hard to communicate, which fortunately for me, and I thank God for that, my mom is one. I don't even think I can tell her the worst thing. I don't think there's nothing you can tell her, me and my brother. So I think it's very important to communicate and just talk about what you're feeling. Maybe ask more questions.
If she chose not to speak to her mom again, Nana, do you think that that would be dishonorable? Because sometimes I think it can get to the level where you feel like you absolutely... I think that if we move away from this story and we just look at parental resentment as a whole, some people are angry at the fact that your mother sent you abroad to go and live with some auntie somewhere. In her mind, she thought she was providing you a better living, but maybe they mistreated you when you were over there. It could be that your mom remarried. You know what I mean? So let's not even place it in your mom was actually having an affair, and you know what I mean? Let's switch it to your mom remarried or your father remarried and you didn't like, your stepmom. There's stepchildren issues are a whole nother issue. If you decide not to speak to your parent again, do you think that that's something that is okay? Do you think people don't talk enough about, I actually don't get along with my mother? Do you think it'd be dishonorable for her to make that decision if the energy isn't in alignment with, like you said, the healing? If her healing is, I actually, since you haven't taken accountability for my feelings or acknowledged my feelings, I actually cannot move past this.
The short answer I want to give is no. I don't think it's dishonorable.
Okay.
But is it beneficial? Mm-hmm. And I think that is such a tough call because once again, you're not in everybody's situation to know the extent of the hurt, the extent of the pain. I think that in situations where the parent is extremely narcissistic and is rogue and cavalier and unapologetic, like on any level, unapologetic on any level, they admit they hurt you, and it's not even so much they don't even see it, or even if they admit they hurt you, it's kind of you deserved it. And I think if you have essentially a psychopathic parent, because that's what I'm explaining is essentially a psychopathic parent, then yes. But I will go on a limb to say most of us are not dealing with a psychopathic parent. That we can find certain levels of engagement. Nobody's saying that, I think that there's a lot of imagery sold to us for the kind of relationships we're supposed to have with our mothers. And I don't believe that's for everyone, right? Like maybe your relationship with your mother is she gets a phone call on Mother's Day and Christmas.
Right.
And
it's not this best friend relationship.
It's not this best friend relationship. And I don't think that's necessary for everybody to have that relationship with their mothers as well. However, like I said, unless you're dealing with an actual psychopath, I find it difficult to suggest to completely stop talking to your mother because I feel like I don't have the full-on answer for that, but I can say this, that people who I know who have done that, their lives just haven't turned out
the same. So there's a joy in being on good terms with your parents.
Yeah, there is a freedom. There's a release.
Or at least having a cordial and respectable relationship.
Right.
So Ria, I want to kind of talk about parents involving their children more when they're making decisions. Like you're moving out of town, city, state, wherever you're moving out of town, and you just tell your children, we're going. Or you're getting married again. Mom, daddy's marrying tomorrow, show up at the wedding, How can parents, to avoid getting to a level of resentment, maybe it's the African culture that just has this, you're young, you don't understand.
Yeah.
I think from about 12, from 7, a lot of conversations are okay to have with a child. What can you say to parents speaking more to their children and involving them in decisions?
I mean, I guess this goes back to something I said before, is like communication is really important. But again, also when you talk about like the cultural component where it's like the kids are the kids, the adults are the adults.
Adults,
They can let us know that they're going to move, it would help because I can tell my friends, I'm going to have to make new friends. But then I feel like, again, it comes back to why do they have to move? They're trying to help their family. But I think it's the communication that is key. Even in just telling your kids why you're moving. Sometimes I think people assume that kids... I used to nanny, and kids are like I feel like they're the smartest.
Perceptive.
Yeah.
Like they are so perceptive. And so sometimes you might think that they will not understand. But chances are if you just try to speak to them, they can make sense of what is happening. And I think what we do wrong Nana Konama said this earlier, we're not parents, but what I think is important is also just like dealing with your child as another human and knowing that they will be affected by things that you do. So it's just important that you kind of just speak to them in your own way as a parent. Try to find a way to communicate with them such that they don't grow up with these sort of like ill feelings.
To go back to what Ria said, parents need to let their children know that they are available for conversation.
Yes.
And even within my conversation, yes, my father had his limits, where he will go from, I'm the listening, doting father to I'm the African father, and I'm tired of these questions. So it's, and I think that little piece of emotional unavailability toughened me up a little bit. You know, I'm not good.
But is it, because I did have a whole conversation about being overly strong and not showing enough vulnerability.
Yeah.
Is it ever worth it though? That toughening, do you really need to
I
be
think it needs to be balanced. I think it needs to be, I think the most important thing that people should know, and people should know this from a very young age, and one, I do advocate parents should talk to their kids. I was just listening to a radio podcast about it, that from the moment the child is even in the womb, out of the womb, read to them, talk to them, because opening that line of communication, what it does is teach a child that communication is available to them. And so when you're even read, like the moment, it doesn't matter, it could be a newborn, just read to, they get used to hearing their parents' voice, they get used to sort of that interaction, they get used to that time. But I think it's a balance. And secondly, I think the most important thing for children to have, I think everybody should have this, but we should have it from the moment we have consciousness, is that we are enough. And I think once you know you are enough, and that is your operating narrative and operating mantra as an individual, it doesn't matter the things you'll go through things. You'll be bullied in school, you'll deal with girl drama or guy drama, you'll deal with nonsense. But I think as long as you know that as your truth, whether your parent is tough or not, and I think that's so important for parents to establish that.
And speak positive things into your children's lives, because I think you're just expected to go to school and pay your school fees, go and do this, like we are literally commanding us through life. And if we pull it back to the story, I think that girl has not heard she is enough. Because she's actually dealing with the rejection for many years. It just doesn't seem like her mom has put that in her, because clearly she was just hustling to make sure that these kids, were good. And it's valid.
That is a
so telling
valid
yourself
feeling.
that as well.
Telling yourself that, but it needs to come from somewhere.
Well, that's where you need to, where you were talking about finding the healing yourself, that you actually just have to move past placing that accountability on them and making it your self-imposed healing process. Like,
might I also add it's tools. So we I had this realization. I was talking to my sister about it, and she, this lady is in her late 30s.
Yes.
And I don't know, we don't know marital status or but a lot of times for instance, my mother went from her father's house straight to my father's house. There was no
dating or
I've been on my own. I've been living my own since I went to college, since I was 18, so it's over 10 years. And so a lot of the tools I have and the revelations that I have that I'm now going to go into a marriage with, my mother has had to figure out through having all her kids in her 20s, being a wife, a mother, being all these things, and having to navigate all these hats that she wore so soon. And a lot of us have similar conversations with our similar situations with our mothers, that we're expecting our mothers who maybe my mother got married at like 21, 22.
They got married young.
To sort
they
of
didn't have that wisdom.
That level of introspection that we've been able to build on our own. And so you've been able to have this level of introspection to recognize that your mother made poor life decisions. But what if all she knew, the mother, was that she was nothing without a man? What if that was her operating narrative? We don't know her operating narrative, right? But here we are with all these degrees and all these schooling and, living in I've lived in New York, DC, I've lived in different places of the world. I've seen the world. I've seen places my parents have never seen, and I've gained so much perspective, and I'm judging you by the same standard which I have now been able to develop for myself. You got to give people room to understand that we're not all there, and her mother, who knows? I mean, had her mother maybe had a little bit more exposure, maybe it would be different, but she didn't. The tools she had available, perhaps it wasn't the best for you, but she did the best with the tools she had. And it's sad that her tools were shabby and rusted.
Would you attend the funeral?
I honestly, I didn't attend my father's funeral. I won't even lie.
Okay. So that's actually something happened to you, coincidentally.
Exactly. Similar situation. So I didn't attend.
And you were okay in that?
I was okay, but let's say, for example, my brothers, it affected them much more. And so every person has a different reaction to certain situations. It takes it differently. And so I think it's important to do the work that you need to do for your situation.
Would you go to the funeral?
Yeah, so whether or not I would go to the funeral myself, I'm not her. And I can't speak to her like emotional state of mind, but I would go. I would go just because this is somebody that without them I wouldn't really be here. So even if it's just to go to kind of speak, I mean, this is poetic.
Well, honoring you as a sperm donor?
Honoring you just as the spirit that allowed me to be here.
Okay.
Like, I think I would go.
Okay.
Yeah, I would go.
I think you have, that's a healing and forgiving heart. Yeah, that's a nice. That's
Maybe
nice.
pour some libation for the ancestors as well.
I don't know that I'd be that interested. I don't know if the word is forgiving. I think I would try to move past it and, like you said, find my own healing. But I'd be ready to close that chapter and just kind of move on and try to maybe better my relationship with the parent who's alive. Because I think it would bring things back into perspective of life is fleeting and the guy has died, not really having a relationship with all his kids. So he's really lost out, to be honest. And I would try to foster a deeper relationship with my mother. I think that's a good, good way to summarize this discussion. Well, thank you, ladies, for joining me and for sharing your candid opinions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's all we have time for today. We'll be back next week with another episode of Chick Chat Live. If you'd like to join the conversation, use the hashtag Chick Chat Live. Follow us on all our social media handles scrolling on the screen below. Bye for now.